Okay, welcome to tonight's planning and zoning meeting, Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. We'll start on our regular agenda. First up is approval of our July 10th minutes. Does anyone have any, we're going to just look at them, corrections, additions, subtractions?
I move their approval.
I'll
Joel?
second.
Joel in a second. And we'll start with a roll call down there. Sue?
Aye.
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 So moved. Okay, that passes. Public comment. This is where we open it up to the public that you may speak to the commission regarding matters that aren't on the agenda or currently pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's no one here, but we'd love to have you come out and talk to us. If you have anything on your mind, please come. Next up, public hearing. Legislative hearing providing the repeal of Title V, Chapter 1, providing for the amendment of Title 4, Chapter 1, Chapter 4, and the addition of the Chapter 12 of the Moscow City Code regarding amendments to the subdivision code. Mike?
That's clear as mud.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner.
Sorry.
Mr. Ray is not going to translate.
So I hope to make this the last time you see a public hearing for the subdivision code update. So this will have been probably it will be the third time this has come to you, and I'll explain here in a minute after I go through the background. So Commission finalized the draft subdivision code in July of 2019. After that, formed a subdivision review committee to review and provide recommendations on the code. It was comprised of a subdivision developer, civil engineer, land use attorney, as well as two P&Z members. The committee met on October 18th of 2019 and November 15th of 2019 and formed the following recommendations. The commission reviewed the committee's recommendations at meetings in January and February of 2020. And then the commission amended portions of the proposed ordinance based upon the committee's recommendations. And then the commission conducted a public hearing on June 24th, 2020 and recommended approval as presented to City Council. That was coinciding with the streets chapter that engineering department was working on. So if you recall, it was Title 5, Chapter 1 was going to be replaced it's currently the subdivision code. Subdivision code was going to move to the end of Title 4, which is the zoning code. And a streets chapter was going to go in place of the subdivision code. And that was to cover a lot of the things that we're going to be void with the adoption of the subdivision code as far as public improvements and street names and things like that. So there would be general standards, street naming and addressing, access management, and curb cuts were being removed from the subdivision code, needed to be inserted in this chapter. And then required improvements with new construction and substantial improvements. So right now, the way we require public improvements is through the subdivision code. So every lot's essentially a subdivision by our definition. And so shifting away from that and adopting a new definition of a subdivision, we needed to fill the void to require, if there's a vacant lot in town that may not be in a subdivision, kind of dictate what improvements are required in certain circumstances. And so these two ordinances really needed to coincide together. So we had to wait on this ordinance to be drafted and be ready for essentially to go through the city council process. So during that time, we were in kind of holding pattern, and then the commission conducted a second public hearing after that was completed. That happened on April 12th, 2023, and they recommended approval as presented to City Council. So prior to advancing on to City Council, it was determined that a joint meeting between City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission should be conducted in case any further code amendments were needed. As the commission recalls, that meeting occurred on March 25th of this year, and no further direction regarding the subdivision ordinance was given to staff. But having been over a year since the public hearing for the last subdivision code ordinance, staff determined that an additional public hearing should be warranted before advancing on to City Council. So that's why we're here tonight. But this is the same ordinance that we've reviewed two other times and conducted those two public hearings. So I'll try to be brief, but cover everything that is in the subdivision code ordinance. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions or want to refresh your memory on certain things. So we've got subdivision code organization. So this is a new chapter, as I mentioned before, in the zoning code, chapter 12. Lot line adjustment, lot division, and subdivision plats is the title. It goes through the lot line adjustment, lot division, subdivision, replatting process. If you recall, it's kind of an odd process right now. Lot line adjustments go to Public Works Finance Committee, and then they're on to City Council. Lot divisions are the same process, but there's a public meeting involved. And it's really awkward, I think, for everybody involved, just because it's, before the committee, which is just 3 members of the City Council, and they forward a recommendation onto the full council. And so we're shifting some things around, or proposing to shift some things around with those 2 processes for lot line adjustments and lot divisions, and then the subdivision and replatting process as well. So currently, lot line adjustment is provide for a change in location, configuration, alignment of a lot line or lot lines common between 2 or more properties, and do not create additional lots. So the request would go to the zoning administrator, it'd be forwarded to the city engineer, fire marshal, and building official. And then after consideration of all comments received, zoning administrator shall, in 3 actions, approve with conditions or revisions, or deny the lot line adjustment. So essentially shifting this to administrative approval, seen as though if the lots meet all the minimum lot size width requirements, there's no other reason why a lot line adjustment between neighbors should be denied. So shifting that to administrative approval. The zoning administrator shall then mail notice of the decision to the applicant, shall provide a summary of the decision. And then there's an appeal process. If the applicant's dissatisfied with the decision, they can appeal the zoning administrator's decision to City Council within 15 days of being notified. So the lot divisions, currently it's 4 or less additional lots for sale, use, development, except when the division includes the extension of a public street right away. And so that was as a result of the conversations with the subdivision committee. They wanted to keep it at 4 lots to be able to go through the lot division process. But when there's an extension of a public street right away, that automatically kicks it into a subdivision plat. And so that was the compromise during that discussion. Similar to the lot line adjustment, request is submitted to the zoning administrator, forward to various city departments, mailed to property owners within 600 feet of the subject property. So this is currently how we do our notification with rezone, subdivision plats, annexation. So it's that same distance, which is double what the state code requires, 300. So it allows for 15 days to submit written comment. And then after consideration of all comments received, zoning administrator shall approve with conditions or deny the lot division. And then a similar process, the decision's mailed within 600 feet to all property owners. And then there's a summary, and then deadline for submission of an appeal. And then the appeal process can be submitted to the zoning administrator within 15 days of being notified, and that goes to City Council. And then the zoning administrator's decision should not be final until the expiration of the appeal period and the submission of a record of survey to conclude that process. So that brings us to the subdivision section, which covers all subdivision related activities. So typically it's, it can't be a lot line adjustment or a lot division. So it's more than 4 additional lots for sale, use, or development, or any division that includes an extension of a public street right away. And more than 4 is consistent with the definition in state code as well. So we're consistent there. So it just goes through kind of city approval required, parkland dedication, public improvements are required, and then the preliminary plat process. Our relevant criteria and standards are listed there. Subdivision phasing, essentially stating that it's allowed to be phased as far as the subdivision development. And then it goes through the preliminary plat approval process, final plat process, and then the development and monumentation agreements, which are required per state code. So going through replatting, this is just stating that if you replat a existing subdivision, you essentially just have to go through the same process as if you were starting over with a subdivision plat. Our subdivision design standards, these are just a couple. We have a purpose statement and then an applicability. Pretty much shall apply to all applications received with the city. So these are just kind of general paragraphs within each of those sections. subdivision or development name. So just stating that we don't want any duplicate names or confusing names for subdivision development names. And then street standards and access. So essentially just stating that everything needs to be constructed in accordance with adopted city standards. So we have city standards for all of our street sections, whether it's minor arterial or collector or local streets. Just making sure that everything is constructed there. Street lights need to be installed by the developer at locations designated by the city engineer, things like that. Number of access points is the next section. And this is largely comes from the fire code. So fire code has required access. You can see essentially less than 30 dwelling units, 1 access point, 30 to 100, 2 access points, more than 100, no less than 3. We also have a section further on here just saying that the number may be reduced by the city engineer if the access is demonstrated that it is adequate to ensure delivery of city services and emergency response, provides for safe and efficient traffic circulation, and the city engineer may require also an increased number of access points due to unusual circumstances of the site or adjacent streets. Next section, we've got street layout and connectivity. So we have a general statement, talking about logical and orderly movement of person and goods throughout the community, provided for the continuation, extension of existing streets. So this is similar language to what we currently have within the subdivision code. Street alignment, so making sure that as we plat subdivisions, that they align with adjacent subdivisions for the continuation of these streets. Discourage offset intersections where possible. Sometimes it's inevitable. You can't avoid that, but where possible, just making sure that the intersections align. Prohibiting gated streets within the city for circulation, connectivity, things like that. And then street connectivity, just making sure that there's pretty much adequate connectivity is provided, and then we propose to adopt this connectivity index here. So essentially, street network shall have a minimum connectivity index of 1.4 unless specific, unique site circumstances prohibit the achievement of such minimum index rating as approved by the city. So essentially, you have number of street links, number of nodes, and then you divide the street links by the nodes, and you get this connectivity ratio, essentially saying that we prefer well-connected, more grid-like street patterns and less cul-de-sac related subdivisions. And so that's how this street connectivity index works here. And a maximum block length, currently 660. We're proposing to retain the 660 maximum block length. And then cul-de-sac allowance, just stating that cul-de-sacs are discouraged unless there's circumstances where challenging topography, circumstances like that, road can't go through, is when cul-de-sacs are permitted. And then maximum cul-de-sac length, just essentially dictating that's the standard block length, so 660 feet there. And anytime you have a cul-de-sac, at the end of it, you need to provide some type of pedestrian bicycle connection to an adjacent street where deemed feasible, where it makes sense. Next section kind of covers pedestrian walkways. So we have a general statement. So this is typically, where there's excessive block lengths is where you need pedestrian walkways. Also to provide direct access to schools, parks, shopping, and employment centers where the existing and proposed street sidewalk system does not provide that access. So in consideration of where such walkways may be required, travel distances shall be compared to existing and proposed public street sidewalks routes and the travel distance of a potential pedestrian walkway. So essentially, if it's deemed to be 50% greater, so the pedestrian walkways shall generally be required where the pedestrian walkway would reduce the average travel distance of the pedestrians by more than 50% or where otherwise required by the council to mitigate potential safety hazards. And then the standards, essentially, there's a 10-foot right-of-way required for the pedestrian walkways. and then constructed to an 8-foot width when there's anticipated to be a high bicycle and pedestrian use for those walkways. Moving on to the lots section, so just lot arrangement, making sure there's just logical and orderly, shall be considerate of designated floodplains or wetlands that may be present with the subdivision development. And then preferred alternative development options such as clustered or PUD should be utilized when such natural features are present to provide design flexibility and reduce development impact upon these areas. Lot lines really should be at right angles, unless has to be, can't be avoided. Through lots should be discouraged. So when you have two frontages on two streets, it's just odd because like Shelby Lane, you have Shelby, and then there's Joseph at the rear, and you have 6-foot tall fences all in the street frontage, and so just not really conducive to a neighborhood feel. And so there's certain circumstances where you can't avoid that, but should be discouraged. And then corner lots shall be increased in size by 10%, greater than minimum lot size, just to make sure there's adequate building envelope on those lots. And then the flag lots, just stating that they're allowed. They just need to be, they're just required in this other section of the city code. Shifts us to the parkland dedication section. So there's a dedication of parkland and then the amount of land to be dedicated with the parkland. Let's see. So this is the section. So we just modified. So based upon the zone, there's a certain percentage of parkland, agricultural, forestry, farm, ranch. We don't have very many of those zones. Those are usually in the area city impact. So those are at 0%. Suburban residential, 1 acre lot sizes for a minimum, 1%, R1, R2, R3, or R4. Incrementally increase. So from 5 all the way up to 12. And then commercial zones would be 12, but we have a caveat down below saying that parkland within the commercial zoning districts is intended to meet the demand that results from the development of residential uses upon commercially zoned land and to mitigate the effects of subdivision development on the ability of the city to deliver services without compromising quality of service delivery or imposing substantial additional cost upon city residents to accommodate the proposed subdivision at the time of the application of the subdivision development. No fee or dedication shall be required if the commercially zoned land is exclusively developed for non-residential uses. All subdivisions that contain commercially zoned land shall enter in a development agreement, essentially stating that if land gets developed into a residential use in the future, then they have to dedicate a certain portion of parkland dedication, which would account for that. And so a lot of our commercial zones are mixed use zones, and so they allow residential development. And so, seeing that residential development is the driver for parkland, just making sure that that's accounted for if there's a development that chooses, but there could be strictly commercial subdivisions that don't have any residential that wouldn't be required. But just amending the section here just to account for, some residential development in commercial zones through a development agreement. Stormwater management and conveyance is the next section. Yeah, essentially just a general statement about stormwater management intended to ensure peak rate of stormwater runoff does not increase with the addition of impervious surface that happen with subdivisions. There's stormwater standards. Essentially just has to be coincide with city standards. So we have a stormwater chapter that goes through all of those standards, just making sure any type of stormwater facility that's part of a subdivision complies with that. Can't increase the pre-development rate on the property. Preservation of natural drainage courses where possible in subdivisions, and then stormwater detention facilities obviously applies to our stormwater runoff control standards, and they'll be sized accordingly based upon that other chapter regarding stormwater. And then the next section is utilities and easements. So essentially dictating that it needs to meet current city standards of width and separation, lift and booster stations. So sometimes there's a development that requires construction of a lift and booster station. This is essentially stating that the developer is responsible for that. If there's a future need for a larger lift or booster station, then the city can participate in the cost of that. Then utility easements, just making sure those are of specific certain width to accommodate the various types of utilities, franchise, water, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, all have different varying widths and separation requirements, especially when they're located in close proximity to each other. Next section covers flood hazard areas. We have a general statement about that. Flood hazard areas, base flood elevation data. So where there's a subdivision, I think it's over 50 lots or 5 acres, and there's no base flood elevation data, then the engineer is required to come up with that information as far as the flood data. We've got required improvements, design and installation of improvements, public improvements required. So this is just going through kind of everything that's in the public realm through a subdivision. So a lot of it is the sidewalks, the curbs, the gutters, the pavement width, all the stormwater, all the public facilities that get developed as part of subdivisions. Just stating that they have to meet all current city standards, and then they can enter into a development agreement for kind of the phasing and deferral of some of those improvements through, essentially the phasing plan. There's a security that gets put in place when they would like to proceed without certain improvements. And so that security is posted at the city, and we hold on to that just to make sure if the developer doesn't construct the improvements, city can come back later and have those constructed with that security. Certain circumstances, public improvements maybe aren't warranted, or they're allowed to do a payment in lieu of public improvements for the construction. And then we cover a warranty period. So I think it's 1 year, and it's proposed to remain at that 1 year as far as any type of defects that occur as part of the work that's conducted. Monumentation agreement. So these are all the corner pins and center street pins. They get installed to set your corner property lines throughout subdivisions. So just a general statement there. Street monuments are a little bit different than lot corners, witness corners. I think somebody had a question before about what witness corners were, so I made sure to look this one up. But essentially, it's just you have your typical corner pin. There may be some circumstance where you can't actually place a corner pin. And so you place it in a different location and document where that location is, essentially. And so maybe it's topography, maybe it's a steep cliff, but it's the corner pin where you can't, maybe it's a tree. So you'd locate it and document it in the plat. And that's what a witness corner is. Recording of the plat with only exterior monumentation. And then the monumentation security. So with every final plat, we have a development agreement on monumentation security. State code requires that all the monuments be placed prior to essentially the subdivision development. And so that's never the case when you develop a subdivision. And so we have this opportunity to go through a monumentation agreement and put security down in order to be able to do the monumentation as you go. This is more housekeeping, bulk and placement regulation table. So this goes through our lot area, lot width, per zone, setback requirements, and then exceptions to minimum setbacks listed above down there at the bottom. This is just a section that was narrative format, and we're just inserting it in the table because it makes more sense that way. So a lot of this has to do with you have your minimum lot width, but then every lot has to at least abut a public street right away by a certain distance, and that's typically 40 feet unless you're a twin home townhouse, flag lot, a development like that. And so not changing anything here, just really going from narrative to table format and inserting it there. And then this is the last two sections. These are the different subdivision options the commission spent quite a bit of time on. The first one's traditional. It's more traditional neighborhood design like Fort Russell and some of the older neighborhoods with public streets, more of a grid pattern with alley loading on a lot of the houses. And so it's just to allow kind of this traditional neighborhood development pattern with smaller lot sizes, a mixture of housing types, neighborhood open space, and a gridded street system. And this would just be allowed through the subdivision plat process, just like any other subdivision. Common open space is greater, so you're allowed to do smaller lot sizes, but you're required to do greater open space when you pursue this option. So this is just a section that goes over Parks and Rec Commission making a recommendation to City Council about the suitability of that open space. Then we have standards that the common open space should meet functional parkland dedication requirements, be dedicated to the public, managed by the city, and be located in one contiguous area unless determined to be more beneficial in multiple locations. So go through kind of the street gridded network. Should be a network of streets and alleys that form an interconnected and grid pattern. Cul-de-sacs or other dead-end street configurations should only be allowed in limited situations where the street cannot be continued or extended due to extreme topography, development, existing development, or natural or man-made physical barrier that precludes such street extension. And then the lots, like we talked about before, should provide vehicle access at the rear. And then the bulk and dimensional standards just coinciding with the reduction in lot sizes. So minimum development size, I think this is what the commission had talked about in length and wanted to insert a minimum lot size. So it's 5 acres, minimum lot area. So these are the individual lots and typically about 30 to 50% reduction in our standard lot sizes. So R1 is currently 9,600. So we'd be proposing to reduce that to 5,500. R4 is a little bit more, so it's 5,000. We're reducing that in half, essentially, to 2,500. So that 30 to 50% reduction in those lot sizes, as well as the lot width, and then a slight reduction in setbacks. So front setback go all the way down to 10, rear still 20, sides 5, and street sides 10. So just a slight reduction there to what we currently have, and then. As you can see, common open space increases with the intensity of the zone, but ranges from 9 to 14%. And then the effective net density is listed there, 7.9 to 24.2, depending upon what the zone is. And maximum building height, 35 in R1, R2, R3, and 40 in R4 or RO, which coincides with current building height requirements.
Why am I confused? In R1, I thought that a single family number was larger than 55.
What?
Yeah, it is. It's 9,600 right now, but we're saying if you do this subdivision, this traditional option, you're able to do the minimum lot size at 5,500.
Got it.
And then the second option is the conservation subdivision option. And this is really just intended to allow subdivision development, higher density, preserving sensitive areas such as floodplain, steep slope, wetlands, critical habitat, natural areas, as well as general open space. And we talked at length about, as the city grows, especially with Paradise Creek, and just being able to preserve a lot of that riparian area adjacent to the creek, but able to do smaller lot sizes in lieu of a greater increase in open space for some of those sensitive areas. So this is similar to the traditional subdivision. We would have kind of those common open space areas. So Parks and Rec Commission takes a look at that, and then the same standards as we had before. There is one at the end, so prioritize preservation of important natural areas such as agricultural land, floodplains, wetlands, steep slope, wildlife habitat, riparian area, or other natural features. However, in the event that there are no natural areas identified upon the property, the utilization of conservation subdivision for preservation of open space in accordance with the design standards may still be permitted. You know, that was quite a bit of discussion. The commission wanted to still allow, even if there weren't sensitive areas, allow for the preservation of open space, regardless of whether or not there were, you know, those sensitive areas on the property. And then the bulk and dimensional standards, so similar to the traditional, you know, minimum development size, 5 acres. And then we just allowed a greater range. Actually, we just allowed suburban residential as the only zone that wasn't allowed in traditional. But same thing, just reducing the lot area, the lot width, and the setback requirements. And then quite a bit more open space. So it ranges from 10 all the way up to 18% open space for the conservation subdivision. And then building height just coincides to what we currently have. So with that, staff recommends the commission, after conducting the public hearing, consideration of testimony received, recommend approval of the proposed ordinance to city council. Certainly try to answer any questions you had.
So,
Go ahead.
Dennis, go.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Mike, I thought I remembered that we had some graphic for the traditional and the conservation subdivisions. Am I not remembering that correctly? I thought we had examples. Just-
Yeah. I mean, with the history, I'd gone through examples of what that would look like and everything, but there was no, but there was no, we didn't have any graphics in the code.
We didn't,
About that.
okay.
Go back to the, think back to the percentage of land required for parks. And remind me what it's been so long since I've, and maybe never thought my way through the percentage difference of, in other words, I can see R4 requiring a larger, but what makes a difference, the percentage difference between, let's just say R1 and R2? R1 doesn't require quite as much. I mean, take me back to the philosophical rationale.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the minimum like population density, depending upon what zone you're in. So if you're in R1, the minimum lot size is 9,600. We're 2.25 people per.
So the sense is that we have more space, a feeling in an R1, so there isn't as much percentage required for park.
You're gonna have more people in the denser zones. So
Right,
the amount of
right.
people drives park
Yeah,
requirements.
the amount of people,
Yeah,
right.
so that's kind of what happens is, yeah, R4, it's gonna be, you know, you might have 24 units per acre, and each one of those units is our
Yeah,
average
that's-
household size, 2.25. So you just do the math, and then you may have R1 and maybe it's 5 units per acre. And so it's quite a bit less population in the different zones. And so that's
Yeah,
why it
okay,
changes.
yeah. I just, as I drive around, as I drive down, I've been going over to watch the new development going on over there, and I drive down Sloniker quite a bit. I mean, that Sloniker Street is certainly classy street and seems so sort of open and wonderful. It's hard to find anything past Mountain View up in the Otani world that looks quite like that. And I find that to be intriguing, that it's a rather special street as streets go. Huh.
Hey, Dennis.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sue, go ahead.
You're not done.
Well, I didn't know if it was
I'm
good.
done.
Good. Go ahead.
Since I wasn't around on the very first iteration of this, it said, you were saying an appeal notification that they had 15 days upon notification to appeal. And how do you know that it's 15 days since they received it? My example is that I was on a cruise one March and I got a phone call I had a whole bunch of emails when I got, or messages when I got back. And there's unknown number and I couldn't understand the person. And so then it came to be September when my cruise was supposed to start. And they said, oh, they canceled that back in March and we called you. So obviously I was not notified. So how do you know that the person that you are sending the response to actually was notified, received the notification? So you can start the 15-day clock.
Well, I mean, it's just mailed out to every real property owner within 600 feet. I mean, most of the
No, I
time.
mean, I'm talking about the appeal notification on lot line adjustments.
Yeah, it's mailed out to everybody within 600 feet. I mean, we don't certify mail everybody. I mean, that would be,
No, I'm not talking about the opportunity to object. I'm talking about when a person, the zoning administrator does something and then the applicant decides that they want to appeal it to council.
Yeah.
They have 15 days to do that. So that's who I'm talking about, the applicant. How do you know that they got the decision of the zoning administrator?
well, if they're the applicant, we're in direct contact with them. So they're required to submit their email and phone number. So it's not like we just send a letter and that's it. We would call them or email them to make sure that they had received notification.
Okay, because that's.
Yeah.
The other thing is where it says that stormwater detention ponds are to be made by the developer, but they're supposed to be maintained by the city. So I see several ponds, quote, water detainment ponds, and they're full of cattails. So is the city supposed to remove those?
It depends on what
They're like packed.
depends on how the pond was designed. Some of them are designed that they percolate into the ground. There's usually an overflow orifice there, but it all depends on whether it's part of the subdivision or like all private properties. If it's a large enough property, then those are private facilities that they have to maintain. Typically, you just have stormwater detention ponds that are public when they're part of a subdivision. So, but yeah, there's numerous ones. I mean, oftentimes they grow cattails in them, but they still function just like they should. But usually they have to go in and clear out kind of the orifice that comes up just to make sure it's functioning correctly. But other than that, I don't think they remove the cattails or anything. It's natural filtration that you have with those. So it's
I was
it's
thinking
kind
of
of
the
it's a
one across the
benefit.
street or just north of the new police department. That one's been, okay. The other question is, when you said 30 dwelling units, that doesn't mean 30 houses. That means, is a dwelling unit still 800 square feet? Or I forgot what a definition of a dwelling unit is anymore.
Which section are you looking at
No.
for the access?
The access, yeah, it's at 30 dwelling units. I just want to know what you consider a dwelling unit to be, a house, or is a 4-bedroom house considered 4 dwelling units? Or do you consider only an apartment building to have 4 dwelling units if it's got 4 apartments? I just want to know how you define.
4 apartments would be 4 dwelling units.
Right.
1 single family, regardless of how many bedrooms, so then it is 1 dwelling unit.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Anything else, Sue?
Nope.
Has anyone else got anything, any questions for Mike? So I guess that's, we don't have any questions. So we open the public hearing now and ... and then close the public hearing? ... Okay. Is there any discussion here amongst us that, anyone have anything to say?
I never want to see this again.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Let's get this sent out.
Okay, well, do it, Nels. Entertain a motion for this thing.
So move.
No.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this
To be sent
to city council, right?
Right.
With no conditions.
Correct.
Okay, Rob?
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
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 All right, so moved. Okay, the next one, Joel, maybe? Yep.
The Transportation Commission meets on the second Thursday of the month, and we meet on the second and fourth. And usually it means that we meet, the transportation meets the day after this one.
Yes.
But since the second Thursday was the 8th, the alignment changed.
Worked, huh? Nice.
So we did meet on the 8th. One of the things that was discussed at the transportation meeting was a presentation on the capital improvement plan for the city of Moscow. And I'm not sure that in my years on two commissions, I'd ever actually seen a capital improvement plan for the city of Moscow. That's been around for a while, but and I'm going to suggest that I think it'd be a good idea for this commission to have a chance to look at the capital improvement plan, which describes, well, basically under headings here: water, sewer, transportation, parks, generic facilities, stormwater. And basically it runs out for, what is it, about 8 years of anticipated projects, likely costs. And so Mike, what's the chance of having at least a presentation from you guys? I'm not excited. You can edit it of particular focus to this commission, but
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't at least send that out electronically so everybody had a copy to take a look at. But I can see what Cody did for transportation, and I'm sure if he had a presentation, I could.
Send it out electronically. It's too big for my email. Won't take it.
Won't be able
Well,
to
we
get
can
it.
send a link. There's we have a Zen 2
Okay.
that you can, yeah.
On the web.
It's on the website.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the website's kind of blurry.
Yeah, we can send a link out.
I'm interested in what you're talking about is, does this plan address at all area of impact or potential future development? Because what I'm thinking about is we have not annexed all of 95 up to where the new, where the new highway comes in and all that it bypasses. It seems that that's ripe for development, the Highway 95 up to where, at least to the top of Valhalla Hill. And has the city thought about what would happen or how they possibly would plan for future development that direction? Because that seems like that's,
and whether
Right.
it would involve some capital costs.
well, yeah, duh. But they really can't predict capital costs because, things like asphalt, the price triples.
Right.
They can't know about that. But have the city done any prognostications on what they think might happen and how, city engineers might decide, well, we need potentially three more lift stations or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, kind of coinciding with Schweitzer development,
Right.
we had a big project to extend water and sewer down to essentially the entrance of Schweitzer to open up a lot of development south of town. It's just going to depend on, obviously ITD has plans for the intersection of Old and New 95,
Right.
and that's currently
But that's
late
way,
dot, but they'll eventually turn Old 95 over to the city, and then we'll be responsible. What I don't know is that I know there's sections of Old 95 where they're planning on resurfacing. And so I don't know if it extends all the way up to the
Yeah.
section that we would be absorbing. But
They turn it over to the city, not to the county?
it'd be the city because we've annexed that pretty much from
All
the
the way?
south. Yeah,
Oh,
all the way
okay.
south, at least just adjacent to Schweitzer's
Well, yeah,
property.
but I was
We've
thinking,
annexed 95, so it would be city's responsibility there. But I don't think we have anything in the capital improvement plan. I think we'll probably wait and see how it plays out with the old and new 95. And then once we have ownership of that, I think that's when we'll probably start planning for that. But yeah, in the comp plan, I mean, we have future land use maps and plans about where development's going to go.
where development's going to go, but I was just thinking
Yeah.
about where infrastructure would go, where
Yeah.
the sewer and water and
Yeah.
type of thing. Because like, for example, I don't know whatever eventually exactly happened to the property between Ridgeview Estates and, that Thompson property that has just now been developed. Are they in that southeast sewer district?
They are, yeah.
Yeah,
They are.
so, but the city supervises that, but there's that weird agreement between the district and the city. And I'm just wondering, is
Yeah,
that
we
going to
collect-
happen again?
We collect fees. I mean, the capacity of the Southeast Sewer District is still at more than 50% capacity. I mean, they have a lot of capacity left.
Ah.
So I'm sure that that'll still function unless the city chooses to take it over at some point. But we've always said that we want everybody to annex if that's going to happen. And I don't think all the property owners are willing to annex their property to have that happen. But it may change when, if wells run dry and water needs to be extended to some of the properties out there. I'm not sure. But we're in the middle of new comprehensive water and sewer system plans.
Okay.
So that's going to inform a
Does
lot of
that
that
fit into
additional
this?
area. It does, yeah. So they'll, part of those plans filter into the capital improvement plan as far as what improvements are needed and what areas they identify deficiencies, and then those take higher priority to replace, things like that.
Dennis, I've got a question
Nelson.
do you recall in recent years talking about Third and Hayes and the potential of a four-way stop? Has that discussion been before you?
No, but I agree with you that
I'm going to put
Valid
in a
issue to talk
request for a four-way. We've had 2 accidents now in the last 2 months, maybe 3 months. And
You can tell.
it seems to me
people
that
are in
I don't know, you blame everything on COVID, but as we've grown, just seems that the traffic is moving a little bit more rapidly past the park than I think is appropriate. And I just wondered if you would had any discussion that would prepare me for. I've got pictures of the
I've
accident.
not heard any discussion.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
it's a-
I think it's.
Want, I can bring the issue up. But I think there's
Well, it might.
some,
I don't know
formal
what'll happen.
procedures to follow to request, for example. a
Yeah.
Who's
stop
the city
sign.
liaison for Transportation Commission?
It's
Haley.
Cody
Uh,
Rule.
City liaison, sorry.
You watch, I go through that one regularly, coming and going.
Scary.
And people stop there.
Yeah.
It
No,
feels-
no,
it feels
I'm
natural.
They assume there's a stop sign there and they
Yeah,
just stop.
that's what's happening is that,
Or the other
of
people
course,
go,
I've
assuming they're
been
gonna
sitting
stop.
on that corner all these years and traffic doesn't really bother me. I'm so used to it. It just seems normal. But what I'm noticing is that more and more people think it's a four-way stop, and consequently, they act like it's a four-way stop, and then people who are used to driving through go racing on. shouting and honking their horn because somebody's acting like it's a four-way stop. And so it seems to me like there's a lack of understanding of the corner. And as, you know, you just see, even with a school getting started, you see so many groups having just a pile of kids in the park, and you think, my gosh, I think it's time to rethink it. But I'm going to turn in a request, and we'll see what happens and whether that shows up over at transportation or not. I'm not sure. Okay, thanks.
No, no worries.
Dennis,
Go ahead.
Mike, when they did the third, we're talking Third and Hayes, right?
Mhm.
So when they did the Third Street, the whole project on Third Street,
Yeah.
I think they looked at that. And if I remember right, which is asking a lot, I thought the park miles per hour was reduced to 25 because of the park, which I'm remembering a long time ago. I'm not sure that that's right, but I thought that they did reduce the speed by the park.
Yeah, and I think I mean, it was a recommendation in the multimodal transportation plan, but yeah, when they did the corridor assessment, I think they looked at that intersection. I'd have to bring it back up.
I don't
but-
remember the details, but I just
Yeah.
remember they looked at it.
Yeah.
And so it's been looked at, it's been discussed. I don't remember what was done with it.
Yeah, I can't recall either.
And I think the park was already reduced to 25, if I remember right.
Yeah, the unevenness of it does occur to me, and I'm not sure that I can prove every one, but the number of places where you've got a 25 sign versus a 35 sign, and you know, especially when you get out on the highway, especially when you get close to some village, and they put 35 out there, an extra mile, and you're wondering, my gosh, we're driving that fast in the middle of our town, and it is it's an interesting discussion. Okay, anyway, that's
Dennis?
Yeah,
Go
ahead.
I just wanted to second Joel's idea about having the capital improvement plan presentation.
That'd be nice.
I think that'd be great. So I hope we can do that.
All right, Joel, you have anything else for us?
Nope.
That's it? All right, well, thank you. Next is announcements. Are there any
Well,
announcements?
I do have a copy of it here. You can at least glance at it if you're interested.
Sure. Okay, Mike, any announcements?
Just regarding the email that I think Jennifer sent out earlier about the Idaho APA conference will be in Moscow in beginning of October. And so if you wanted to go out there and look at the agenda, I think it's just a preliminary agenda right now, but we can get everybody registered. Whoever wants to attend, there's
Jennifer said, I was interested, and Jennifer said I have to register myself, pay for it by myself, and I'd get reimbursed.
I was gonna do the reimbursement method,
okay.
if you want me to do that, the amount of information that they asked for.
Yeah.
Cause it'd just be easier.
Okay. We can figure it out. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, we have money in the P&Z budget for this activity.
Mhm.
So if anybody wants to go, just let us know and we'll figure something out. If you don't prefer that, I'm sure we can figure something else out.
if you perceive that there's going to be things that are really relevant for the commission, let us know if you see something coming up that looks real.
Well, Nels will be giving Nels, you can hop on a tour with Nels up in campus and Fort Russell.
Dulce and I have put in to do tours either whether we're going to end up doing a tour of downtown or Fort Russell or the university is still up for grabs a little bit. But
I think on the agenda, it mentioned Fort Russell.
what's that?
I think on the agenda, it mentioned Fort Russell.
Yeah, I'm
there
bigger
was a
on
campus
Fort Russell
tour also.
than I am. The university and Fort Russell are where I adore giving tours. I'm for downtown, in my mind, I've never been quite as excited about downtown. It's so lively anyway that people enjoy it, but I don't have the same level of stories that I have for the university in Fort Russell.
Right. Okay, Mike, any other?
Out of curiosity, what's the Deary Mobile Tour and why are we going to Deary?
I don't know. I have to get the information. I'm not quite sure. I haven't been involved in the planning. Amy, with our department has.
You have to drive there.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yeah, I guess they're looking at the redevelopment. It's mobile because you have to drive there.
Yeah, but what's in Deary? Where are we going?
Well, what's in Deary, they've been redeveloping it. Quite a few new things.
Okay.
There's a new quilt shop, there's a coffee shop.
I wouldn't be going to Deary for that, I'm sorry.
There's a new bakery.
I like it.
Wouldn't be going to that either, sorry.
Okay, Mike, any other announcements?
None from staff.
Okay, we got upcoming events. Next planning and zoning meeting is August 28th, 2024. We still good on that, you think?
Yeah, we've got a couple final plats we'll have to take a look at. So
Okay.
we've got, yeah.
Okay. Anything else anyone have? Nope. Okay, we'll adjourn. Kaboom.
Boom. I like it.